Web Analytics, please welcome Dana Jones.
Hi. This is my third Media Post Summit, and I am Dana Jones from Southern Company. So a little bit about me. I am from Atlanta, Georgia. I have been at Southern Company since 2016, and when I first started there, every different subgroup within the organization was using their own tool. So a lot of my responsibility was to establish a use case for everyone to get on the same platform and to get buy-in from a lot of different stakeholders. We're talking users, decision makers, and also the people that were going to pay for it to buy the same platform. I created some of the first automated campaigns there, which are our welcome series, and really managed that change as we migrated to a new tool. And my pandemic hobby is weighted jump rope, so yeah. A little bit more background. This is the progress since 2016 up until 2021. So we started with about 50 email sends a year as an organization, and now we're up to close to 400. So this is just the marketing side, not looking at the transactional side of things. And a couple more key details. I feel like this is always what I want to know when I'm listening, so I wanted to include it in the deck. Like, what email platform are you using? We migrated to Eloqua in 2020, right at the pandemic, so that was really stressful. We've been using email on assets since 2017. We really like that. We use it for the analytics on the internal email side, and then looking at the marketing side and the optimization. For project management, we like Smartsheets, and then that's our web tools. We're an Adobe shop. And in terms of the organizational structure, so my role did not exist before I got into it. So a little bit more about what I do is I kind of serve as like a consultant, a subject matter expert for a Southern company. And the 3 companies listed there are our operating companies that we call them. But I'd almost consider what I do is like working at an agency and managing 3 brands. And so the brands are Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi Power. We are a utilities company, so we're selling gas and electric utilities. And a little bit of my responsibilities are managing the strategic direction. So I'd say a day-to-day for me is answering a lot of questions, going into meetings and giving strategic recommendations, and also managing our process and making sure that stuff flows. The next couple of slides, I'm really going to speak to Alabama Power, and we email 1 million customers. And our current state subscription process before we moved into this direction was literally a one-click opt-out. So for all of our groups, every email that we sent, the unsubscribe process was if they clicked it, we don't contact them anymore, which I felt like was not optimal. And I found this opportunity as we migrated to a new tool to execute on my vision. So I watched a lot of Age of Ultron in the pandemic, and I saw myself as Thor with this big vision of let's not do things the way we've been doing them. Let's change since we're moving to this new platform. And one of the things that Eloqua has capability to do is create a preference center. So let's use what the tool has on hand and do something we haven't been able to do before because we really didn't have email options. So from there, I do have to say, most people shut down that idea about the preference center. They were like, let's just move to the new tool as we've been doing things. Let's just keep doing things as we've done them before. But along the way, I started doing a lot more work with Alabama Power. And as I moved over to help support them, their executives set out with these 2 goals. And they said, we want to increase our email sends, and we want to acquire 1.5 million email addresses. Now, a couple slides back, I told you guys they had 1 million email addresses already. So I was really excited because email is getting more visibility across the organization, and leaderships were actually saying, like, we want to do more. But I also felt a lot of other feelings. I was like, okay, I'm excited. I'm a little bit overwhelmed because when I look at that 271 number or 371 number, which is close to 400 total sends that we did in 2021, that was really stressful. And now to have our leadership saying we want to do more and we want to grow our email list, it got to be a lot of other feelings too, and I was a little bit overwhelmed. So looking at the two goals on those slides, just speaking specifically to Alabama Power, we did double our sends from 2020 to 2021. So I'm like, we already did a lot. But I also started thinking back to that original vision, and I'm like, maybe I can like scoot that idea back on the table to say like, we really need to have those preferences and better align them with what the goals are of our executive team are. So I started identifying other opportunities. This is our anchor content. So it is content that goes out every single month. It's a newsletter to all Alabama Power residential customers. And there's data for it going all the way back to the beginning of, I'd say, 2020. And so monthly, I could see that we had this high number of bounce backs. I also had some data around like reachable contacts, and 88% of our contacts were not reachable for Alabama Power. And the cool thing about working on 3 brands that have the same product is compared to the other brands, that was really, really low. And also customers started responding back to the email with their automated, hey, my email address has changed, or it was straight up saying like, my name is wrong. That's not even who I am. So if you think back on those initial goals where our leadership is saying we want to increase sends and we want to grow our email database, well, I think some of those questions or some of those goals should have been met with assumptions because one, like I said, we were really stressed out by doubling the email sends, but we really didn't grow our team. And then seeing the high number of like soft bounce backs and the high number of customers saying back to us like, this isn't me, my email address has changed, that was starting to tell us people aren't even giving us their best email address. And so then we go down to acquiring 1.5 million email addresses. So there really has never been a value add explained to customers of why they should even subscribe to our messages. And internally, especially for me, it's just like, well, why do we want to grow our email list? We don't sell a lot of things in these emails. Of course, we're getting cost savings, we're getting enrollment in different programs, but I almost thought it was like a bragging right to say they had 1.5 million email addresses versus an actual value add to us to be able to promote more things and generate more revenue. It was more of just a flex. So I started thinking about, okay, if we move forward with that preference center idea, what are some expected outcomes? So tried to align the expected outcomes with the initial executive goals, which were increase those total subscriptions. If we have a preference center, then some of the people that aren't our customers can start subscribing. We can more market to the whole household instead of one email in the household. We can give them more options instead of that one-click unsubscribe. We can improve our total percentage of reachable contacts. Like I said, it's 88%, and we'd love to get to 90%, or even better, the 96% that the other groups were seeing. And then, selfishly, the bottom one is my push because within the brands that I help support our operating companies, Alabama and Georgia are very competitive with each other. And if one brand does something, the other brand will follow suit. So if I was able to really convince Alabama Power to move forward with this idea, Georgia would also want to move forward with the idea, and then later Mississippi as well. So now I'm going to kind of talk to the technical part of this, and literally this is what we tested over the last couple of days. So excuse me if I kind of get it wrong, but I think I got it right. There's 3 journeys to the preference center for us. We have a customer care portal where customers can log in and pay their bills. And within that care portal, there are 2 options. There's going to be 2 options shown to them on how they can update their subscription. They're going to get asked to subscribe, or they're going to get asked to update their preferences. And then the final one is actually the whole preference center, of course, that you link to in the bottom of the email, that we can share that link with anyone and they can just subscribe by putting in their information. And so after the first 2 experiences, or actually after all experiences, you're triggered an email, you'll get the email in your inbox, and then you just confirm that you've updated your subscriptions. So this part was a really big win because our team loves when our tools work together, because so often that can't happen. So within the customer care portal, they're offered an experience because they're Alabama Power customers, and we generate that experience using Adobe Target. So I feel like I got that right. All right, so in lessons learned, I was really excited because I finally got some buy-in to my idea. And I think what I really learned from this whole thing was to start making sure, if I do have an idea, find ways to really align it and tie it into what everybody else wants to do. I have someone who works parallel to me in terms of working with all the different operating companies, and she just manages our Adobe products. And so really working alongside her to say like, hey, we need to do this. How can we work together? And that's where she was able to really put the Adobe Target part with it. And when you come together with the tools, like I said, it makes our teams really happy. It makes everybody really excited. And so that was a big win to collaborate with her. It helped me get buy-in better instead of just kind of going for it by myself and saying, we need this, we need this. I think we're more than one person gathered together. At least for me, it made it a lot easier for people to say, like, we see the vision now, where they didn't really see it as much when I was like, we got to do this. Another win, I would say, is using the metrics and using the data that we saw. So I really just made sure to track the data and share the analytics that I was seeing. And it's great that we had years and months worth of information to say, this doesn't quite look like it's aligned with what you guys really want to do. So let's pivot and make it a little bit better. All right, thanks.
Dana, thank you. Hang on. We have questions for Dana about how she did this. Yep.
Hi there. So when you implemented your, I'm sorry. Good morning. I'm Chelsea Meisner. I'm from Chipotle. So when you implemented your preference center, how many options were you providing people, and did you find that there was a threshold of too many options that made people panic and unsubscribe, or any other adverse effects?
Sure. So we have 5 options, and they kind of encompass like news, program, and offers. And so we haven't rolled it out yet. We're going to start rolling it out in the next couple of weeks. So we'll see if that's too many or too few. I think what the big learning was for me from the data is we're sending a newsletter. And so some people seemed really enthusiastic because on the engagement side, the metrics are really good. But then there was just a large number of people that weren't even getting it at all because the email wasn't good. And so it was really difficult to tell like what people just didn't want to get because they didn't have an option to tell us that it's just not this, so.
What have you learned so far about the content that drives people towards the preference center, what works and what doesn't work, and describing and explaining the value exchange?
Yeah, so I think the value exchange, like we really had to start ironing it out. And the first time we did it was through that Target experience within our online customer care portal, just saying like, hey, we have these updates. We'd love to get your email address so that you'd like to receive them in the future. And now that we have that up, we can kind of start measuring, are people going to interact with it or are they not going to interact with it? And are those assumptions true that customers just don't want to get the messaging, or maybe they did?
And what kind of, in the end, what did you learn about what kind of content people really do want to get from their power company other than, your bill's ready?
Yeah, they really like getting alerts. So we had a big push around content and getting them to manage their alerts. So we don't have to send out so many storm messaging. So we would tell them like, hey, log into your online care portal, and here's how you can get text messages instead. And so we had a really great response to campaigns like that, so that we're not emailing them when a storm happens. Historically, performance on those emails just don't do as well. Pre-storm does well, but during the storm, nobody really wants to open their email. And so once we saw the insight from that, it was like, okay, one big thing for me is like those messages that happen during the storm are something that everybody has to drop and try to manage and get out the door, and it's stressful. And I was like, hey, the response to this isn't even worth it. And we're really stressed out by trying to do it. Maybe we got to think of a better approach. So we started proactively sending out that messaging like, hey, make sure you're signed up for outage alerts to get them via text. And that really reduced the amount of storm emails we sent out. So they did like messaging like that. They liked things that were just were more informative. I'm trying to think of another, and like on some of the more awareness type stuff we did, like Think Alignment a couple weeks ago, that did really well too.
And what have you set down as your key metrics of success here, and the key metrics that you want to bring to your other brands to show them?
Sure, I think that's a good question. So key metrics of success are, launching it.
Did it crash? Did it or did it not crash?
Yeah, individually, yeah. Just
like,
getting
okay.
it launched, making sure it works. That was a key part of the testing. So it's working. It's functioning. The automated triggers from Eloqua are working. Making sure the two tools speak to each other. So that was a really exciting part. In terms of metrics, I'd love to see. Enrollments, opt-ins that are not just our customers. That was a big push for them. Hopefully we can get to that 1.5 million that they'd like to see. That would be a win as well. And then I think for me, a big win with this one was just the fact that our leaders let us really drive this without them coming in and trying to give opinions. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but sometimes there's people within an organization who don't really know a lot about email, but they have a lot to say. And so, yeah. So
that was an entire room nodding in affirmation.
I'm really appreciative that my manager specifically, I was like, hey, I want to do this. And she was just like, I mean, I believe in you. Not necessarily having to really understand the why behind it. So I didn't have to bring, like, when I had that initial vision, I had a whole deck and I just put it all out on the table and I was like, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. And it was just shut down. But when I went to her, I didn't have to do all that. She was like, okay, we got extra budget. Do you? And so I think that was a big win here to be able to just have that runway. And so I know I was like, I definitely have to get more granular metrics down. And like I said, the more subscriptions we see, that will definitely be a win. But, and I hate to say this, but the other groups are like, well, just because they're doing it, we're going to do it. They don't even care about the success. So that's a whole different thing. But, but yeah, I think that it would be valuable to have those really clear-cut metrics, and that would be the next step. Now that we have it working, we really want to do a re-engagement campaign to just make sure that those people that we're not quite reaching, if we have other emails on file for them, we can get them to give us their best email and prove that value to them, that we're going to send them great content.
I mean, this is a really shocking, realization of how many of your thought to be subscribers were giving you phony emails, or were giving you emails from sources that died quickly. To have that many people on your list that really weren't even giving you the right email.
Yeah, I think some months we were seeing up to about 20,000 bounces, and I think that initial goal where I said they wanted to increase email sends. Well, when you double your total email sends, what we started seeing was like, okay, we were typically sending maybe 2 emails a month. Now we're sending 7, and the bounce backs have increased. The engagement didn't increase the way you thought it would, but we did more work. And so really looking at the details of it kind of proved to say, like, we did more, but the outcome you expected was that customers would be more engaged. And that didn't always happen every month. Mm-hmm. So that was another thing we were able to really look at.
Dana Jones, thanks so much.